And this sharing of our pain has made more people want to see a different form of development so that they're not hurt and they're not in pain. So I see that as an opportunity, even though we wish they came along earlier, to still build and mobilize for the change that we need. You know, it's harder to fool people now because we've seen it play out over and over again. So we've seen urban renewal policies that really were Negro renewal policies. Amazon trying to come to New York was like, we see what you did in Seattle, and no, we don't want you here. Now, in order to get to what I consider community economic development, the bill focuses on developing the infrastructure and the groups of people within our community. We need to be more powerful, and we are powerful, but many of us, including myself, are working in silos, and we need to come together and work together and move in a more concerted effort, because that's what's going to build our power. And I was just thinking, because a lot of the hidden, and I have hidden in quotes in my own notes, a lot of hidden doors of power still have white-only signs on it. So I'm not saying that we haven't figured out a way to get into those spaces, but we need to be in those spaces more and increase our numbers. Because one person in a space can make meaningful change, but more people, like-minded people in a space, make even more. And we need even more change than we have now. We need both a preventative and liberating approach to the work that we're doing. And for me, it's not just ownership of businesses and the land and the housing that we live in, but collective and public ownership of that. I'm sure many of you already know this, but just to kind of state the obvious, the reminder of gentrification is most likely to take place in neighborhoods with a high number of renters, right? So ownership is a way to anchor housing. The same in terms of our businesses. Most of our businesses and firms exploit our labor in terms of our time and the conditions that we work in. And to the extent that we own the businesses, and if they're collective, even better, we can avoid that exploitation. So I'm a big fan of collective ownership, and cooperatives in particular. Will help us to address the racism. I believe is one tool that will help us to address the racism. But it's not a structural shield, right? You can't price your way out of racism. So that's why the structural focus is so needed. And remembering that racism as a system includes the ability to have the state power, the political leadership that enforces things on you, and a police state that enforces it. So this is why I believe more of us need to run for office, and also why we need to support a decarceral state. We need to end policing as it exists today. So that's my immediate assessment, and we can unpack a lot of what I said, but I just was hoping to have that as a beginning point. And also, this should not leave us without hope, because there are communities and leaders on the front lines that are creating strategies to respond to the crises that we're facing in our communities, and also developing strategies on how best ways to move forward and sharing the lessons learned so that others don't have to start from scratch. And I'm really looking forward to hearing from the panel very shortly on their community-driven solutions to the crises. In terms of the ownership piece, to increase our power, again, we do need to control our resources, and we need to own. And that starts with land, and that can be in the form of community land trust, and it starts with housing in terms of anchoring and giving people the stability in order to do the additional work, and our businesses in terms of owning our businesses and the cooperative ownership that can be great for many reasons. And I also heard someone say at the conference, so I wanted to give this reason, because it resonated with me. Cooperative ownership can also build collective hope. And I think in our struggle and our political climate, that sometimes that's really hard to hold on to. And we need that hope. And these spaces, the reason why I'm genuinely grateful, are often energizing and provide that hope and fervor to keep going. and keep working on these issues. But with that said, we have created communities of success in the past, and we've seen them come under attack. You can think of examples like Rosewood. So we also have to dismantle whiteness. I was thinking of the woman who left us and she said, I'm going to put this out there on the table. And she was like, maybe we should not identify as black. And I'm not saying I have the answer to that, and I haven't thought it out fully, but I was thinking, I want to keep the blackness, but I want to get rid of the whiteness in terms of what those terms mean, in terms of power structure. So turning to the panelists, I'll let each of them introduce themselves, and they will talk to us about the strategies that they're coming up with to combat displacement and other forms of oppression in our community.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Vaughn Perry. I work with the 11th Street Bridge Park, which is a project of building bridges across the river in Washington, D.C. Building Bridges Across the River is a nonprofit organization located in the area of Ward 8, which is east of the river, east of the Anacostia River, D.C. And their whole focus is around providing quality services to residents that are in the east of the river, D.C., and mainly that is a community that is 95% African American, low to moderate income, and oftentimes higher crime rates. But ultimately, these are communities that have been disinvested in, historically. So, what we're doing with the 11th Street Bridge Park is transforming an old vehicular bridge into a recreational park. And from the very beginning, it's been a community-driven project where before there was even any design or engineer side, we literally had over 200 meetings asking the community if this is something that they even wanted. And after there being some excitement around this idea of a bridge park, the next question was, okay, well, this is something that the community wants. We want you to help us to shape it. And not just shape it in the way of like what color should the benches be, but shape it in the way of what kind of programming should be exhibited on the park. And we wanted to make sure that it was certainly representative of the community that we were in. But not only was it important to look at the bricks and mortar, but also what we heard from the community, as well as we looked at projects both across our city as well as across the country. Oftentimes when development comes in, there are, I would say oftentimes some unintended negative consequences, but I would say oftentimes some intended negative consequences, like displacement. And so we built a series of town hall meetings to work directly with the community to help us to come up with solutions to mitigate the displacement that could take place as the park was being built. We wanted to make sure that the residents that live here could benefit from the amenity and the resources that would come with the park. And so what we did was work with them to create what's called our equitable development plan. There are 34 different strategies, but they break down between housing, workforce, cultural arts, and small business. And we have been working closely with nonprofit organizations to help us to implement a number of those strategies over the last 5 years. And workforce, we've been providing specific construction training and training up people so that when the park is being built, we would have a pool of people that we could go to so that there could be some ownership in terms of folks that are from the community actually built the park. With the small business, we've been providing technical assistance and small business loans to a lot of the businesses trying to build them up. Through the housing, we have a home buyers club where we are training long-time renters to transition into home ownership and to purchase homes. We have also stood up a community land trust in the area. And so we just continue to look at different ways to work with the community so that there can start to be some collective ownership within the community. Look forward to speaking with you and hearing some of your questions later on.
My name is Maricela Gomez, and I am a co-founder and a member of what we call a caretaking council for an organization called Village of Love and Resistance. So we're fairly new. We're maybe 4 years old or so. And what we're located physically in East Baltimore. Who's familiar with East Baltimore? Yeah. What we are is a collective of Black and brown folk who are intentional about Black people and brown people owning stuff in a majority Black city. So we have clear intention. We are unapologetic about really making that clear to everyone who's involved with us, and also to our funders. We don't shy away from that. If folks have an issue around redistributing white wealth, we invite that conversation in. And so what do we do besides being clear about Black and brown people needing to own stuff? What we are is a collective that is looking at communities taking back land. And not just taking back land to own land, but certainly, 40 acres and a mule is way past time. So we're clear about that, the land piece. But we're also really clear that in order to take back land and to use the land for the best health and wellness of communities, that we have to have organized people. So right now, a lot of our historically under-resourced communities, racially neglected communities, are really fragmented, right? So a lot of my work in the past has been around how fragmented communities result in a lot of the issues that we have, where we blame the victim, right? We blame the communities that they don't want to do anything together. We have real problems with cohesion. But part of the whole under-resourcing and marginalizing and racism and classism and everything else it's a cost, right? What's resulted is we have communities that are very fragmented. So VLAR, Village of Love and Resistance, is about building a base of people through organizing strategies who will come together and figure out what will it take for us to be a more cohesive people in communities where we historically have not been as cohesive, that would allow us to progress in more ways. And one of the tools and things that we're going to use to do that is taking back land. And so how are we doing that specifically? So we're going to use a community development investment trust fund. So I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but I'll tell you what that is. So right now we just put a contract down on a 17,000 square foot building, an old church, the old Centennial Church on the corner of Monument and Enser. And so we're going to buy that building, and we're going to invite in communities in the 3 zip codes around that building to become co-owners of that building, right? And the way we're going to do that, we've already started it. We've been doing organizing for the last year in Latrobe Homes, Perkins Homes. And so we're looking at everybody, not just who we think are people who should own land or be investors. We're being innovative in the way that we're saying low-income people can own land and own shares and be investors, not just people with an income or $1 million fund. And the way we do that, we're innovating off 2 other places in the country that have done that. San Diego with Market Creek Plaza, Portland, Oregon with Mercy Core Northwest. And they did similar things. They had a plaza in San Diego where 400 residents in the immediate community co-owned the plaza. And they could own share in that land by putting as little as $50 toward owning that building. And in the end, what happened is the decision-making board that decided who and what would be in that plaza were the same people who lived in that community. Now that's what we call community-owned driven investment and development. And what that does is it assures that as the community changes, the people who are living there have the opportunity to co-own the land and therefore decide also who's going to be in that land. So for example, when it came to deciding which pizza would be in the property, in that plaza, the community chose the pizza place that used to come in their community no matter what the crime. And they turned down the one that would drive in their communities in certain zip codes. See, that's the kind of community-driven development we need. We need people who have lived through the crime and the grind. When our communities start changing, these same people need to be the one that decide what happens in that community. So we're doing something similar. Portland's doing something similar. They had also a plaza. They developed investment strategies where a person could become an investor for as little as $10 a month. So if you could put $10 a month into this fund, you now own a share in this building. And now they have, I think, over 120 communities within 3 zip codes that co-own this plaza that houses all kinds of different things. So that's what our project is about with this building, where we've done some concept mapping with folks in the neighborhood. We've learned what people want. We asked people, what do you want to see in this building? We got 84 ideas. We asked them to rank it. Daycare was the first thing, so what's going to be in the building? The daycare, right? But the building is also going to house a co-living, an intentional co-living space for activists grounded in love. It's going to hold wellness space, some shared office space, some retail space. But that's just the beginning. Once that place is redeveloped and activities and programs and investment is moving and flowing, we're going to one by one identify these vacant houses in our communities, and we're going to use the same strategy. Community people living in East Baltimore that have been historically displaced when development starts are going to be the one who can put as little as $10 in to own that row house. So you might see 50 people, and not just low-income investors, right? There'll be some high-income investors in there too. But we may have 50 people co-own one row house, renovate it, sell it, or rent it, and then get that return on their investment. And bit by bit, we're going to start building equity and asset, wealth, land ownership in communities and with people who really start to think, because you live in a public housing complex, you can't be an investor. So we're saying we're going to change that, and Baltimore's going to be right on the cutting edge to bring that kind of change around economic development in our disinvested cities, right here and right now. Volar, Village of Love and Resistance. It's www.volar.site. Check us out. We're looking for partners. We have investors who are interested, but we really want this to be a community-driven process that can spread not just in a small area in East Baltimore, but across the city and beyond. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Anthony Presley. I'm Executive Director at Druid Heights Community Development Corporation. And I saw a lot of hands that said they're not from Baltimore, but just a little bit about Baltimore's history. There's a street in the city that you probably know as North Avenue. It's one of our main fairs. North Avenue used to be the dividing line between Baltimore City and Baltimore County up until around 1865. So the most affluent African Americans in this city lived on those corridors leading towards North Avenue. You go up and down North Avenue, especially around Madison, Drew Hill, McCullough Street, you'll find 3-story Victorian-style homes with 5 bedrooms, marble staircases. That's where Thurgood Marshall, Billie Holiday, Cam Calloway, U.B. Blake. That's where the most affluent African Americans lived, and they were blacks on county lines, so to speak. They had money, they had a lot of wealth. It remained a historical community, especially Druid Heights. It's from the National Registry of Historic Communities. It remained that way until the 1968 King riots. Right after Dr. King died, 770 houses in this community that were formerly occupied the day after the riots were vacant and boarded up. All of that out of the King riots. So the community then was designated an urban renewal area. And we're there now 45 years later, 45 years strong, rebuilding this historic community. We are going on the principle of investment without displacement. When we started organizing the community 45 years ago, we created a master plan. I've been around this community for a little more than 20 years, so I've seen how it's changed and how you have to involve the community. Strategy one, if you're going to change the community, you have to involve the community. You can't change it from the outside, you have to change it in the community, with the community. And our mission is to create a self-empowered community. So in our survey, we found out some of the things that the community needed. They needed housing, they needed jobs, they needed so. Our focus as a CDC is on the things that they need. We have an after-school program, summer camp program, all of those things we provide free for the community. Each summer we serve 150 children. Throughout the school year, 50 children, feeding them a hot meal that's delivered to the center every day and helping them with their homework. So we're there for families. We do community outreach, monthly community meetings, newsletters, Green Thumb Club, 6 different homeowner associations umbrella under us in and around the community, including the Eden Street Block Club and the Lawn Street Block Club, all of that umbrella around us. So community outreach is number one. We also do reentry, where we help men and women coming home from incarceration. We have staff in New Orleans, 2 staff persons, and we also provide transitional housing for women and children. We have 21 units, 3 bedrooms, for families who need a place to transition economically. They pay, it's subsidized Section 8 housing, the housing site-based program, but that's a way of helping families as well. We do real estate development. We've developed more than 500 housing units. We've taken a lot of those vacancies and turned them over and created a way for first-time home buyers to afford these homes. And we do real estate development, which is our for-profit arm. And in that, we've built more than, as I said, 500 housing units. Right now, through our housing program, our HUD site, Certified Housing Counseling Program, we bring in about 40 families a month and teach them the basics of home ownership. And that's about 580 families in a year. Right now, today, as we sit here, we have 98 families under contract, ready to purchase a home in Baltimore right now. Went through the program, walked through our doors, and they're now signing contracts to purchase homes. We really believe in investment without displacement. We've taken certain homes in the community, and there's one I really want to talk about on Drew Hill Avenue. It's a big 3-story, 5-bedroom home. Took $250,000 to renovate it. And we were able to get $100,000 of that from subsidy from the government. We sold that house to a family at $150,000, already valued at $250,000. We are now about to do 16 houses. We own the entire we own the 2200 block of Drew Hill Avenue. The community owns that whole block. Got it from the city. We had 8 on one side, the city had 8 on the other side. We swapped. We took the 8 that they had, and now we own all 16 of those on Drew Hill Avenue. We're building the Cab Callaway Square on the other side of the street. Now, the goal for those homes is to make them income-generating properties, building in granting units, so that the family can move in, they can rent out a certain portion of that home, that will generate the income they need so that they can move forward. We can't just keep sticking people in a 30-year mortgage and call ourselves helping families. We have to see how are we helping these families. Are they making money on their properties? Why not? So our strategy is really about making sure we are helping families move forward. And you help them in every way. We're not just brick and mortars. Our real focus is on building people. And if you ever lose sight of that, we built a playground with the help of Kaboom and CarMax. We built another playground with the help of Kaboom and the NFL. We just did a big park in the community with the help of the National Wildlife Federation, so nature play space. We're doing the Cab Callaway Park, which is a cost of $10 million, 2.7 acres in the community. We bring this investment because we hold our city officials accountable. My last strategy that I want to talk about is for a long time, The three communities that are joined together by Pennsylvania Avenue competed against each other. Big time competition. And things were getting done on a small scale. This year, we started something called the West Baltimore Gateway, which brought together Upton, Penn North, and Drew Heights. Now we're working together. At one point, the state asked for a Bernie application, Baltimore Regional Neighborhood Initiative applications, and different communities were competing. Upton and Drew Heights, we both competed for that designation. The state asked us to come together, see if you can work it out. One of you decide who's going to be Bernie, and you'll be responsible for being fiduciary for the other. We came together, that wasn't going to work. Neither one of us wanted each other to be the Bernie without the other. So we agreed to both submit. And guess what? We're now both designated Bernie communities, which now gives us even more power. As a collaborative, we've been able to create the Black Arts and Entertainment District on Pennsylvania Avenue. We've been able to really, now we have something called the subcommittee, where this Thursday, the three community leaders will go down to City Hall, and we'll tell them a list of things that need to be done in these geographic areas. And then a month later, we'll go back and meet with the mayor and all the department heads to report what was and what wasn't done. No one thought of that until the three of us came together. This is monthly, it's been going on all year. We're able to see results. I say there's a tree that needs to come down, there's some lights that need to go up. The challenge for us to think about is, how are these smaller communities making it? You know what I mean? We just went to settlement with the city for $1.1 million bond money. And we were required to bring $20,000 to the table in order to get the money. What about these smaller communities? How will they ever come up with that $20,000? How will they ever go to closing for funding if you need money to get money? You know what I mean? The reimbursable system. I have a staff of 14. We have to find a way to pay the staff and then be reimbursed. These are problems in our communities that nobody's really looking at. They need to figure out a way to advance monies to communities. If we are 45 years strong, with strong history, we own a senior plaza apartment building with 47 units property. But we're struggling. Imagine those without the resources. So I think the conversation should be about how we come together to help those communities that don't have resources at all.